All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Raging Diecast podcast. We got an absolute banger of a guest for you today. He is a real estate mogul, one of the greatest collectors of all times. We have Bruce Pascal. Bruce, thank you so much for being here. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm excited to be here. Jacob, thank you very much. Doing great. Battling about 8 inches or 9 inches of snow outside today, but a great day to relax.
We are here. We're going to have a good time. This is going to be a good podcast. Real quickly, I want to dive into where it all started. When did you start wrestling?
Wrestling. How'd you find out about that? I was 1 year in high school, and it was kind of funny because I was in ninth grade, or actually I was in 10th grade, and they had nobody my weight. So at the end of the year, out of 600 students, only two 10th graders got varsity jackets. Me at wrestling at 112 pounds. So how's that?
Let's go. Let's go. It's so good to have you. I know I messaged you. You responded within maybe 30 seconds. You're very, very active in the community. I see it all over Facebook, all over Instagram. You're passionate about Hot Wheels. Obviously, most everyone, when they hear of collector, they know Bruce Pascal. So getting you on here is out of my mind having you here. I know you had told me you're really big into Hot Wheels history, Hot Wheels prototypes. That's something that I will definitely let you have the floor on. That is not really what I'm about, which kind of leads into one of the questions I have. Hot Wheels history, Hot Wheels prototypes, kind of more of the retro stuff. How do you feel about new collectors coming in, like guys like myself, where the emphasis really isn't on the Hot Wheels, it's on the latest castings dropping out? How do you feel about that? Because I know a passion of yours is kind of putting it on to the next generation.
So, one of the great things about Hot Wheels is if you go to a convention and you stopped everybody when they're walking in, it's actually segmented much more than you've ever imagined. You'll meet a guy who only collects Corvettes. You'll meet a guy that only collects super treasure hunts. You'll meet somebody that collects red lines. You meet somebody that only collects Japanese cars. Met somebody the other day and only collected trucks. I met a fireman who collected fire trucks. So I love the segmentation of the hobby, and all of us get into the hobby at one point. I was 7 or 8 years old playing with Hot Wheels. Of course, I had the Sweet 16, the Camaro, the VW, the Eldorado. You didn't really collect Hot Wheels in those days. You just had them. You weren't even thinking of the word collecting. They were toys. So today, I'm excited to see all these people going to the stores, buying cars they like, because they're basically new entries into the hobby. Just like baseball cards, even if you collect only the newest baseball cards that come out every year, there's not one of those collectors that wouldn't like to own 1950s early mint Mickey Mantle card, right? So that's how I look at the red lines. We're the Mickey Mantles, the older items from the 40s and 50s of baseball card collectors. That's kind of the red line era.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because I went to I had a table at a swap meet and I was next to a friend of mine. He had some red lines and people would come up and they'd be like, "Oh, are those customs? What are those?" So, people who don't know much about them, it's kind of an interesting topic and we're definitely going to dive in. Obviously, rear load pink beach bomb, that is like Bruce Pascal. Let's dive in a little bit on that. Obviously, Pawn Stars, that was a big thing. How did that episode come about, the Pawn Stars episode?
So, geez, they're still showing it. Somebody told me they was on last week, and I still see it on Facebook every once in a while. I forgot how many years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, I got a phone call. Would you like to be on Pawn Stars? I said, nah, not really. And I actually declined. And then about a year later, they called me back and they said, look, we really want you on Pawn Stars. And I said, well, look, I really don't want to sell a car. We talked. They said, look, they're a business. They're going to make you an offer. You have a right to say no, or whatever. So I said, you know what? I want to do something that's good for the hobby and have fun at the same time. Because the more non-collectors or people who aren't in the hobby know that Hot Wheels have value, the more it helps the entire hobby collecting. So I did it. A buddy and I went to Vegas. We did the shoot. It truly is like a real show. The only time we did a retake is when a car backfired in the back lot. We had to do a scene because of the loud explosion, but it's a live show. It's taped, but it's all cut, handheld cameras, and you make your deal or you don't make your deal. So it was kind of a fun weekend.
So I kind of get the gist of what you're saying. Would you have, if the offer was right, would you have sold the car?
You know what? I think I would have at that one moment, but I would have regretted it. And thank God I didn't do it. Does that make sense? It's like, numbers in the hobbies have changed. The slippers from the Wizard of Oz just sold for like $30 million. Okay. Mecum auctions is coming up, and you're going to see some cars selling for 4 or 5 plus millions of dollars. Baseball cards, Pokemon cards. There's been an explosion of values for the rarest of the rarest and the most famous. So I count my blessings. I didn't sell it that day, and he didn't say, "Oh yeah, I'll take it. Here you go. Thanks for the offer." I would have been devastated, but I'm glad I got it. Still, it's still in my possession 25 years later, which is to me pretty impressive for me to own something that long, because usually I'm always wheeling and dealing.
So, is there a number on that car now? Would you ever sell that car? And if so, what would that number be today?
The number at this moment would be $1 million. If somebody offered me 900,000, I'd probably turn it down. It's, to me, the hobby is growing. You can see it, you can feel it. It's the 56th year of Hot Wheels, and I think the future is brighter than even the past. More and more collectors, more young people getting in. More people my age have more disposable income when the kids are already paid. Your college is paid for. You sold your house. I think the hobby has a lot of legs to go.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with that. And I think COVID really had a big impact on the hobby because when all that came about, it was like, well, what can we do? Well, we'll go to the store
Mm-hmm.
and look for Hot Wheels. And so a lot of collectors, myself included in that, I guess I was like a COVID baby into Hot Wheels. How did you? I've heard rumors of how you came across the pink beach bomb, something about sitting on a windowsill. I'm not sure if that's true. How did you come across that car?
So the true story was I started collecting Hot Wheels. Let's just go back a little bit. I was born in 1961. Hot Wheels came out in 68. I was the prototype, I like that word, young child who played with Hot Wheels when they first came out. When I was 7, 8, 9 years old, maybe 10, I put them in a cigar box. In 1999, my mom called and she said, "Hey, I'm cleaning out the house. Do you want these?" I said, "Sure." So I picked them up and I opened up the cigar box, and there were about 20 Hot Wheels, red lines, my original cars from 68 through 70. I was with a buddy of mine named Curtis Paul who said, "Hey, I'll give you $200 for that box." And I said, "Are you serious? They're worth money?" And he laughed and said, "Sure." Well, he was one of my best friends at the time. So I said, "I'll collect too." So within 2 weeks, I was running ads in the Washington Post saying, "Do you have Hot Wheels? Are you about 50 years old? I'll buy them." Well, I started buying a lot of collections, having a lot of fun, getting into the hobby. And then I read a newspaper article that said the rarest Hot Wheel in the world sold for $72,000. And I came home and I told my wife, I said, "I can't believe I missed that opportunity." Because if the rarest coins are worth millions and, the rarest cars, the rarest art, that's a cheap price. I thought 72,000 for the rarest and the king of the hobby. So didn't think much about it. And then 3 months later, I read another article in another newspaper and a small wording, the same article in the end saying the deal has not closed yet, but the seller's already bought his Dodge Viper. So I said, "Holy moly." Guy's seller's name was Chris Marshall. If you try to look up Chris Marshall across the United States, there's about 712,000 of them, pretty common name. So what did I do? I called the guy who wrote the article. And he said, "Look, I'm not really allowed to give you his name and number, but if you have a message, I'll pass it on." I said, "Please give a message that I'm very interested in buying the Pink Beach Bomb." Well, the phone rang the next day. We went back and forth, months negotiating, and we finally made a deal. And that's how I bought the pink rear load beach bomb. I bought it from the guy, Chris Marshall, who actually purchased it directly from the employee. His name was Jacobus Van Nibwegen, that worked for Mattel and was a liaison engineer. The liaison engineer's job was to have a copy of every car. So in case this isn't a car, this is a mouse, but in case the factory said the hoods are coming off, Jacobus could look at the Hot Wheel example he had in his drawer and give him advice on how to fix things. He was an engineer. And as such, whatever car they just made, they just gave him any old colors and everything. They didn't care about production colors. He just needed a copy of the car. And that's how I got the car. And that was back in, it was either very much at the end of 1999 or the beginning of 2000.
So did you end up paying more than the 72,000 that was there?
So he wanted a non-disclosure agreement for obvious reasons. somewhere between $50 and $72,000, we came on a price. And, I'm happy. He's happy. I would say it's something, it was one of those bold decisions I made in my life that was not regretted at all.
Yeah, obviously you're Bruce, but I feel like that car is a would you say a big reason why you are who you are in the hobby?
So I think who I am in the hobby is more from the historical side, and it's because of the car. So let me tell you a story. Back in those days, there was one real book on Hot Wheel values by a guy named Mike Strauss. According to Chris Marshall, Mike Strauss tried to buy the car, but never came close to a price. And then after I bought the car, Mike Strauss said to other people, "Oh, that car's fake." Now, can you imagine me buying a car like that and then somebody saying your car is fake? So I got highly disappointed in that statement. And I called Chris Marshall. I said, "Did you sell me a fake car?" He goes, "This isn't fake. I bought it from the Mattel employee." So he put me on the phone with the Mattel employee. He was an old elderly man. He goes, "How dare somebody says this is fake? You can't go back into Mattel and repaint a car, put it together. It's top security. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll send you all the information to prove I worked for Mattel. I'll send you an affidavit." He was incredibly cooperative. And included in this package was a stack of all the memorabilia of him working for Mattel. And one night I came home and I saw the papers. I saw the papers sitting on my desk, and one of them was a newsletter. And the newsletter had a picture of Mattel's golf team, awards for how many years they worked at Mattel. In that one newsletter, I'm going to take a guess, it had 100 names of employees throughout all the articles. And I said to myself, wait a second, if that guy had a car worth $70,000 sitting in his garage, maybe somebody else has something rare. So I created a database. It took me over a year to do it, of close to 4,000 names associated with the history of Mattel. They were from the newsletters, from a former employee who actually sent me an original telephone directory of Mattel from 1969, from buying the Hot Wheels record album and writing all the names of people associated, doing research on the TV show they did. And out of these 4,000 names, if you're trying to call Jacob, you'll never find him. But if you're trying to call Otto Cooney, and there's only 3 of them in California, you're going to get lucky. And that's exactly what I did. So I started calling his employees. And then when I finally found them, my goal was, look, the reason I'm calling you is I'm doing research on the history of Mattel and Hot Wheels. Would you mind sharing your story of what did you do? And I took detailed notes. I have them all till today. And they would, with delight, tell me about the great days of working for Mattel, tell me what their role was. And at the end of the conversation, I would always say, did you keep anything? Bruce, I'm so sorry. I gave them to my grandkids. But I was a model maker, and I have one of the wood models. Let me just see here. This was a mold we took of the first Camaro ever made. If you want, I'll sell it to you. I was like, are you kidding me? Okay, deal. The next guy, well, I worked in the legal department. All I have is some patents. Are you interested in getting some original copies of those? Yes. Blueprints, drawings, everything. So that's where I started learning about the hobby. And in 2011, I wrote a book on redline prototypes with Mike Zarnock that truly explained a lot of these items that you see. So example, if somebody showed you an item like this and you have no idea what this is, well, you can look on the bottom and it says short order. That was the name of an actual car that was made back in the 1970 era. It's signed by Howard Reese. He was the designer of Hot Wheels. And to make a Hot Wheel, somebody actually had to carve it by hand. It took 200 to 400 hours to carve that wood. And then a machine called a pantograph would reduce it to 1/64th scale. So to me, picking up all these items that were really not in the realm of the Hot Wheels hobby, everybody's buying cars from the pegs or old red lines. Nobody was really searching this unusual historical stuff. And once you get into it, it was a deep well, Jacob. I just kept getting deeper and deeper. Every phone call, every night. I did this for a period of 4 years, from 9 to 10 o'clock at night, Eastern Standard Time, which was 6 o'clock in California, where a lot of the employees lived. And I caught most of them while they're in their 70s and 80s. And unfortunately now, 56 years later, many of them, if you're 40 years old when you work at Mattel, you're 96 today. So it's tough. So I think I did as many interviews as I could.
So how, I mean, that's dedication beyond belief. I don't know. I never told you, but I sold Hot Wheels for a little bit on Whatnot.
Mhm.
Just built a little community there, and packages would arrive, and my wife would be like, "Let me guess, more Hot Wheels." Did you have a significant other in your life? How did they feel about the 4 years of dedication to that task?
Well, it was a miracle because my wife was reading books every night and she wanted quiet time between 9 and 10. So I would go to the basement where my Hot Wheels room was and make all the calls. So it was a marriage made in heaven. She's also extremely supportive of my what I've done in the hobby and she loves it. Now that I have grandkids and they come by my warehouse and they play on the floor with all the Hot Wheels and they get in the little car that's electric and drive around the Hot Wheel car, and so it's a big part of my family now. So Bruce has got his thing. She's very supportive. Matter of fact, I'm teaching her tonight for the first time how to sell on eBay. And she listed her first 10 cars tonight. We're
Nice.
going live tonight. Her name is Lava Loca on eBay, LAVALOKA. I don't know when the podcast is coming on, but this is her first car she's putting on. And we'll see how she did. She's excited about it.
Yeah, everyone, if you see this, go check out Lava Loca on eBay. I will try to. I'll get with you. I'll get the link. It'll be pinned in the description.
Great.
So we'll definitely have that out there. So now it sounds like your wife is kind of, is she looking at collections to buy on her own? What does
No,
that
no,
look like?
no, no. I think the point was I had a guy. I did a program where every year I would usually hire a high school kid. I would teach them how to do eBay, encourage them to get other accounts, neighbors, friends to sell things. And I would give them 10 to 15% of the sales price. Then we pay eBay and they would sell extra cars I got from a collection that either weren't the quality I needed or I had doubles, triples, or quads of the same car. My last guy I had was so good throughout all his 3 years of high school, stayed with me all his years of college. And he called me the other day. He says, Bruce, I'm sorry. I need a real job now. So he's getting into wealth management. He's leaving me. And I told my wife, I got all these cars. And she said, well, I'd love to learn. Maybe I can help you out. So that was tonight's little experiment.
Nice.
Thank you.
15% going to the wife. I'm obviously she gets much more than that.
I told her it's 5%. So shh. Now I'm kidding.
So
I'll take care of her.
So obviously you have a ton of stuff. You have basically a museum. People can go there. It looks like at scheduled times based off of your website, guys. Go check out Bruce's website. Also will be pinned in the description. With that being said, how much do you think your collection is worth?
Well, it's worth is what somebody will pay for it. And the problem of valuing my collection is I have some unique items. For example, Harry Bradley's original drawings for the first, 12 of the 16 cars, blueprints for the first 12 of the 16 cars. So it's kind of hard to value these rare items. And, what do you value the Beach Bomb for? What do you value overchrome cars? So, but it's clearly well over $1 million.
Overchromes is something I did want to bring up. I also was doing a little bit of research. Looked like that maybe some of the first cars prototypes were made with guitar strings. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
I can explain that to you. Handler was in a room in late 66, early 67, and said, I want to get into the diecast business. Everyone around him said, Mr. Handler, President Mattel, you're crazy. Matchbox is so dominant. It'd be like, why are we wasting our time? He says, gosh darn it, I want to get into business. I want to make the cars better, faster, more playable. We're going to get into it. So an engineer went out to a store and bought a bunch of Matchbox cars, drilled them apart, and looked at their suspension. It was like a little steel bar that went across the two wheels. So no wonder when the car rolled down a track, it only would go 2 feet if you're lucky. So they had it was either mandolin or guitar wire. It was some wire for one of the toys that Mattel had that never really sold a lot. And they had this thin wire. Imagine a wire like on a toy violin. They had miles of it. So the guy clipped off a little bit and then bent it and made a torsion system. So it bounced up and down, put that in the bottom of the Matchbox, put the car on top. They went back to Mr. Handler's office. and they took gutters, like from a house. The first gutter, you rolled down, Matchbox went 2 feet. Then they said, Mr. Handler, here's the next car that we're going to go out with. It ran across, hit the other wall, which is not true. Mr. Handler said, those are Hot Wheels. And but the bottom line is, that was one of the rumors. Bottom line is the car just performed amazing with the new suspension system. And that was the reason, because they had extra toy wire from, it was either guitar or mandolin or violin, one of those three. I got to figure out one day, but you get the point. And that's how they came up with the wire to get the suspension. I heard the story from 3 different people, including people that were in the room at the time. So to me, hearing it firsthand, it's like you become an amateur historian. It's just like, wow, it's amazing.
Yeah, obviously doesn't sound like they made very many of those. But if anyone has one, I'm sure it's you. Do you have a mandolin string kind of car?
I sold it.
No.
Yeah, I had it. It was I met a guy named Mr. Peterson, who is the apprentice model maker. He put the car together and had a blank base, a painted top from the Mustang of the Matchbox with that suspension. But you got to realize, Mattel adopted that suspension in the early years. So all those cars that you bought in 68, 69, 70, they were all riding on that unique suspension. It just wasn't that same wire.
So you had that car, you sold it. Did it? I'd assume it fetched pretty decent chunk.
I don't remember. It was a few $1,000s years and years and years ago. I was bothered for one reason. When I bought the car, it looked like it had just been painted. And I said to Mr. Peterson, this car just doesn't look old. He goes, oh, it was in such bad condition, I took it apart and I repainted the top. So because of that one issue, I was bothered by having a piece of history that was restored, because I like owning cars that have never been tampered with, since the day they were made originally. So for that reason, it didn't fit 100% of my criteria, even though it was a holy grail piece of history for Mattel.
Going to something, shifting gears a little bit, going a different direction. I believe you're into kind of like old school displays.
Yes.
Hot Wheels displays. Talk
Yes.
to me about that. That's something that I honestly know nothing about.
So back in 1968, if you walked into a store, not every store, but a lot of big stores, they had this, let me take a guess, almost 3 foot long, 1 foot back, 18 inches high, and a scene of all the first 16 cars that came out, Sweet 16. And that was the original display that people could go to the store and say, wow, those are the cars that are coming out this year. At least 1 or 2 of those cars were considered extremely rare on that display. One is the only place you can ever find them. The Mustang was painted in not a red, but a watermelon color. And that little watermelon Hot Wheels worth thousands of dollars if you have one today. And then also on that display was either a brown or a blue Camaro. The brown Camaro is worth about $4,000. So those displays had a couple of unique cars that were hard to find. And the displays themselves, the 1968 display, is probably worth $25,000 to $35,000 today. They did a few in 69 and a few in 70. Since you're here, I'll try to show you real quick. I happen to have a 70 sitting in my office right here. There you go. That's the 1970 display.
Wow.
So you get an idea. Shows you all the cars. So
that's awesome.
This one's in mint condition. So that's the 1970 display. And they're pretty cool. They're hard to find. A lot of time the plastic deteriorates because they've been around for 30 years or 40 years or 50 years. But collectors love displays. And I even go to stores today. If I see a rack of Hot Wheels in a display, and they have 6 displays, and I'll move all the cars out, put like 10 cars in one display, and I'll just pick the whole display up and I'll take it to the counter and say, I'll take these 10. And the grocery store lets me do it. So I have displays from 2025, 2024, 23, 22, all the way back to 1968.
Wow. And there's a few questions I want to ask. How many of those 70, 69, 68, how many of those displays do you have?
So I have a 68 original store display, the 70 display I just showed you, a 1970 era German Heiss Rider display. I have a British display from 1971. that James Bond had himself, Roger Moore, in front of a magazine called Look in England. There are only 200 of those displays made, and there's only about 3 or 4 known today. So I have one of those. And then a bunch of other smaller, later ones going around. But those are my key early ones that I have.
In kind of going back to something else you said, in store buying Hot Wheels, do you collect modern day Hot Wheels, or is that, for the grandkids? What does that look like for you?
So I absolutely go to the store and I buy what I like. They came out last year with one that was a keychain. Do you remember that one? I just thought it was just like a great slab of metal. And I have a bunch of those. I have a couple granddaughters, so I buy a lot of pink cars and I put them aside for the girls. And I buy what I like. I tend to always like realistic cars more so than fantasy cars, and realistic cars painted, without tampos. Just the same way you see a Tesla going down the street. I love to see a Tesla. Keep it simple like that. And over the years, I bought a lot of collections. So at any one moment, I probably have 3 to 4 thousand Hot Wheels from the 80s and 90s and 2000s just sitting in the back. And I comb through them. I comb through them and I take the Ferraris out, the Porsches out, and the Japanese cars, and I just stick those to the side. And I enjoy going to shows myself and selling. And I went to a show the other day, and I think I came home with like 194 $1 bills because I was just selling these for $1 a pack, saying, "Hey, take whatever you want." I already picked out what I want.
So going back to the pink cars, I have a friend, Jason. I don't know why he wants to know when the first pink car rolled into production. Sounds like there was some issues, and maybe Mattel did the first one to try to get the girl audience. Do you know when the first pink car rolled into production?
So there's a large number of experts I've talked to think the first pink car ever produced, more than anything else accidentally, was my pink rear load beach bomb, because that was painted. You can almost look at the date somewhere between February and May of 1969, because one of the employees who did rear load beach bombs kept a diary of the production when they were first made on February 15th, 1969. And we know we quickly modified the base and the body and everything. So we know it's that first quarter. There were no pink cars being sold in the first half of 69. You have some cars like a Mighty Maverick that came out around that time, but the pink wasn't released, we think, until 1970. A lot of times they would make the same car over years and change the colors. So sometime in the 1970 era.
Gotcha. This is a very hard jolt. Just came to my mind. Obviously, massive Hot Wheels collector. Do you collect? There's a lot of new brands out right now. Kaido House, Inno 64. Are you collecting that, or are you just a Hot Wheels guy?
Just the Hot Wheels guy, pure 100%. Even though Mattel owns Matchbox, I don't even collect Matchbox. If I get one in, I sell them right away, whether it's anything. Although I'm not taking anything away from everybody trying to have their place in the hobby world. And even back when Hot Wheels first came out, Johnny Lightning was a major competitor. And I don't collect Johnny Lightnings, but I pick them up every once in a while in collections, and they're kind of cool to look at. But I'm a Hot Wheels guy.
Yeah, I mean, I collect only Hot Wheels dots and 510, so I understand that. But it is interesting to see these Kaido House where they're doing these wide body kits and almost like what customizers are doing, but they're just releasing them. So it's kind of interesting. I figured I knew the answer to that question, but you never know. Bruce might have some Inno 64s or something, but not the case. And you heard it here first.
Not here, not here.
Tell us about Overchromes.
So let me put a question back to you, Jacob. Have you ever been to McDonald's and you look in the wall and you see this photograph of the most beautiful hamburger in the world, and the pickle and the mustard, the bun's perfect? You ever seen that photograph?
You can look at me. I've been to McDonald's.
Yeah. So you see the picture on the wall, and then when you order it and you unwrap it, does it ever look like the picture on the wall?
It's smashed. Looks like someone put a
Yeah,
fist
never,
in it.
never, never. So Hot Wheels wanted to make a few cars, and there's two theories. The predominant theory, and we have some evidence, is for TV commercials. So when the cars would go down fast around the track and the lights were on them, they would sparkle like Christmas ornaments. And the best I was told when the individual was told to make these special cars in Hong Kong. They made a bunch of them and then they stopped because it took forever to make quality control. You had to barrel plate them, go through an extra process, get the top and the bottom chromed completely, and then they painted them. And the cars were perfect. And these pretty rare cars, they look like gems. I mean, matter of fact, I wouldn't do it, but if I drilled a hole through it and attached it to my wife as a necklace, you would see the sparkling and say, that's a beautiful necklace. They're that pretty. So they were made for advertising and TV commercials. Now, how do we know that? Because on eBay over 15 years ago, a man's estate was selling a bunch of cars and they included chrome cars. And in the description, he was a former person who produced TV commercials for Mattel. Okay. The only other people that I knew had them were some executives, and a liaison engineer had some. So I do believe these were sort of the first batch made from Hong Kong, sent back to the United States and distributed TV commercial, a couple executives and some engineers. That's kind of how they were found. They're mystery cars, absolutely stunning, very valuable.
So I know you've kind of sold cars from time to time. Have you sold any of those, or are those something you hoard?
They're one of the only cars I ever regret selling some of them. I think I had 9 of them at one time and I sold about 4 or 5 of them. Then I bought another one from somebody else. So today, and I donated one to the Peterson Museum because I wanted one to be in the Automobile Museum, I think one of the best automobile museums in the world. But I still have a T-Bird, a Camaro, and 2 Mustangs. So I love the cars. They're beautiful.
Yeah, I obviously I saw you. It was, I think, you and Two Chains or something crazy.
Yeah. Two
That's a
Chains.
great episode.
It was a TV show called Most Expensiveness, and he had one instruction: don't touch the cars. And he's like 6'7". We start the TV show, and he picks one up like this. I looked at him like he did put it down. I gave him the evil eye.
Yeah, I learned a lot from that. So guys, make sure you go check out that episode. It's a pretty funny episode. In that episode, you have something called a brass dream wagon, I believe. What is the significance of that brass car?
So there's double significance. Most Hot Wheels in the earliest days, they needed a car to be tested in track, but to go through the production process may take months of design, making a wood, etc. So once the design was picked, somebody would hand make an exact replica out of brass because brass had the same weight and qualities as the Zamek that was used, the metal to make the actual cars. The Dream Wagon was a car that was designed, named, sent away to a company called IDA to make the molds. A brass car was made, but for some reason, the car was never put into production. And I own the brass version of that car. One day I had a dream that Hot Wheels would release the cars that were never released from the earlier days, but they have the plans. And I still need to talk to Mattel about doing that, maybe for the 60th anniversary, because they're always years behind. But it was a car that was there's a few cars that were like that in Mattel's history, that they went all the way up to a certain point, and for whatever reason, somebody said, don't release it. Same thing happened with a car called the Ford Cobra. It looked very much like an old 442. And my gut feeling is I never found anybody to give me an explanation, but I believe the car looks so much like the old 442 they decided not to have 2 cars that similar. And I have the resin of that car. There's a couple of those resins existing.
This is something that I have a personal question on, and it's probably not possible, but one thing that I always thought would be cool is I'm obviously a Datsun 510 collector. I think it would be cool to have the actual casting where the car is cast. Do you have any castings? I feel like that would be something that would be incredibly hard to get, maybe some legalities there. Do you have anything like that?
I regret once there was one on eBay and I didn't bid enough to get it. So I don't have any castings. My understanding is they sort of lasted until they were no longer used and then they were destroyed. There were some castings that obviously got out to Argentina because there was a company called Muki that used Hot Wheels molds to make the cars. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't think I know anybody that really has an original red line, metal casting that, was used to actually make the cars. It's on my dream list. People always say, what are you looking for? That would be one of them.
All right, guys. Well, if anyone has one, you heard it here.
Just
Hit up
laying
Bruce.
around, yeah, exactly.
You were, I believe, a judge on Legends Tour. What was that experience like?
So I've done it 3 times now, and I've really enjoyed each time. The first year I did it, it was in New Jersey, and the car we picked ended up winning to be the car, the Legends winner. So I was pretty excited. It was a car that made look like part rocket airplane. It was pretty cool. I was a judge in California on 2 occasions, and actually once in Philadelphia. So I've done it 4 times now. It's kind of fun. I love going around and seeing the ingenuity, interviewing the people that make these cars. Because as much as I'm a Hot Wheel lover, I was an antique cool car lover since I was born. With my dad, who collected old cars, I went to car shows when I was 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old. And I've owned about 30 antique cars before I got into Hot Wheels. So that's kind of my passion is automobilia. Being a Legends judge kind of combines the two, the love of real cars and what could be a Hot Wheel at the same time.
Yeah, and you see a lot of, I assume you probably go to SEMA because that's like the automotive, pushing the envelope
Yeah.
of, and obviously, you heard Brendan say he goes to SEMA, gets inspiration, a lot of cool stuff. A lot of
Yeah.
Hot Wheel automobile guys go there. So I assume SEMA is something that you attend as well.
So when I was there for the Pawn Stars weekend, it was the weekend of SEMA, and I snuck in because you have to be part of you have to get a ticket and you have to be part of an automotive company, which I'm not. I guess I could have called Mattel and asked them for an extra ticket, but I didn't. I had such a blast going to the SEMA show. It's everything from car polishes to wheels to tires to new paint jobs to vinyl. It's absolutely a car lover's dream, and it's like a car show because they'll take the latest Rolls Royce you've ever seen and put like $7,000 hubcaps on it. I loved it. I do want to go back. It's on my bucket list. If you're into watching your steps, like every day, like, hey, I did 6,000 steps today. If you do the SEMA show, it's like 3 of the biggest warehouses you've ever seen in your life. I think it's like 50,000 steps. You're going to die at the end of the day. It's so much walking, but it's worth every step.
Yeah, I've heard people say that it's not possible to walk down every single aisle. It's just you can't do it. So that's something that I've never been to. I would love to attend. Maybe I'll run into you there. What is we'll kind of start wrapping it up here. What is something that you would love to just share with the world, the diecast community? What's on Bruce's mind?
That's a great question. So, what's on my mind these days is something kind of sad. And that is, as my name has gotten more exposure, more people are Googling when somebody in their family dies. So I can't believe how many phone calls I'm getting. I get at least 1 or 2 phone calls a week where this guy called me today. His brother died. He has 5,000 Hot Wheels. Somebody called me a week before. They had 17,000 Hot Wheels. And what happened is a lot of these people in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, they literally went out and bought these gigantic tubs. And I know there's a lot of collectors out there who do this, saying, hey, I'm going to buy these mainline cars. I'm going to put them away. I'm paying 89 cents each, 99 cents each. And, we're going to retire. Well, the problem is about 100,000 other people did that. And there's 100,000 tubs sitting out there today of all these cars never touched from the 90s and 2000s on. Now, there's some exceptions and some valuable cars. I'll take a treasure hunt from 1995 Camaro any day. Then I'll take some of the other, great cars that are in there. But I'm really feeling sad because there's a lot of people now who have these big collections who are passing away. And what do they do? Typically, if there's red lines, I'll make an offer. And I'm buying a collection right now. I've already gotten, I've done $9,000 worth of purchases from them. A lot of the stuff, very few of them are red lines, and I tend to get them and then I resell them. So kind of works. I'll give somebody 70 cents on a dollar. I'll sell it. I won't make much money, but at the end of the day, I'll keep what I want and get some of the money back. So we're at that age now where I'm the prototypical Hot Wheel collector from 1968 who played with them, and I'm 63. So let's be realistic. If the average life expectancy is 80, that first generation of people, you're going to start getting many collections hitting the market. So I looked at it as sad. At the same time, of course, it's an opportunity to help other people out and grow your collection.
Yeah, and that's a great note. Kind of like I mentioned earlier, I sold on Whatnot, and you're
Mm-hmm.
you're dead on the money. Those blue cards, what we call blue cards, they're just so hard to sell. You're giving basically pennies on the dollar,
Mhm.
because, and then you got to look at fees, right? So like Whatnot has, it's like 11.9. So then I got to buy a box and bubble wrap
Yeah.
and tape. And so yeah, I think you're dead on the money with that. And that's kind of one thing that I've tried to, and am currently trying to do, is these new collectors who are just grabbing main lines like crazy. Obviously, collect what you like, it's your collection, but odds are most of those just random main lines you're grabbing, they're not going to retire you, and so
So, two comments. Number one, I encourage everybody to buy what they like. And if they like that Japanese car or that car that looks like a cat, get what you buy what you like, and that's it. It's very difficult to buy something new and predict what will be a good investment. Okay? Now, I will tell you this also. There's an interesting theory out there. Even though when these people call me and they have 3,000 Hot Wheels in these tubs from 1990s, there's always a few gems in there. So even if they have to wholesale all 3,000 cards for 50 cents each, the odds are you could pull out about 80, 90 cars out of there that are worth between, $5 and maybe $100. And if you add it all up, you're actually probably getting back all your investment, and you had all the enjoyment of owning those cars. So don't buy new cars as an investment, buy them because of a passion. Okay. And the second thing is there is an interconnectability. There are some collectors who never sold a car. So for those few, disregard what I'm about to say, but you can't remove the commerce part of the hobby. It is an integral part of my life now, where I am regularly buying, selling on the side, and then watching the collection grow. And that's exciting to me because you never know what you're going to find. Last year in 2024, I bought a collection and it had a cheetah in the collection. Do you know what a cheetah is?
I don't.
In 1968, one of the first 16 cars was called the Python. And it was originally supposed to be called the Cheetah. But what happened was when Mattel was about to release it, they got a phone call saying, "Hey, we own a car company called the Cheetah. Look it up, 1965. You can't name your car after our car." So Mattel had to stop production of all those cheetahs. They thought they got rid of all of them, but about a dozen have escaped from the factory over the years. I own 3 of them because I love them. You know what I mean? They're a story car, and they actually say cheetah on the bottom. And to me, if you keep hunting out there, you're going to find some rarities like that. And I had a couple finds last year of people contacting me with one guy sent me a box that his mother had never given to him as a Christmas gift. It was the original tire that held cars, and 4 cars in unique packages. And it was a box that if you collected enough green stamps in California in 1970, you could send it in for $1 and get this gift. Well, the lady never even gave it to their kids. So here I'm opening up like a time capsule from
Wow.
1970 with these cars that are in like cellophane, not real packages. It's pretty cool. So there's finds out there, and that's what keeps me motivated to keep going on.
Yeah, and you've kind of touched on it a bit. Some people obviously are collecting the cars because they like them and they should. But with like any collectible out there, I personally think there is some aspect of value
Mm-hmm.
that people, maybe not everyone, but people can collect for. For instance, your Pink Beach Bomb, if that's something you pay somewhere between 50,000 and 72,000, you sell it for 1 million maybe. Who's not, I mean, that's no, not everyone's going to be able to do that, but there is, for collectibles in general, there is some aspect to value, and we can't just turn a blind eye to that.
You can't. And that actually, for me, that's something that's kind of fun about it. Also, I get enjoyment every time I buy a car for the collection, but I also get enjoyment selling. There's just something fun about 38, 40, 39. We got a deal. PayPal me, put it in a box, ship it. There's just something kind of fun about that, making a deal. The only time it's not fun is if I paid 100 and I sold it for 39, which has happened. But there's an enjoyment part of that, especially going to conventions and making friends and seeing your friends that you see 20 years in a row now too. It's kind of exciting.
Yeah, and we'll kind of work on wrapping it up. But I went to my local swap meet and I was buying out tables. Like, what do you want for the whole table? I'll buy it. And one guy was like, no, like this is my social, like
Yeah.
this is fun for me. And
Yeah.
there's that aspect too, where you go, you're hanging out with like-minded individuals, and that's just part of like the community, getting to know people. That's a
Yep.
great way to do it, is set up
Yeah.
a table, talk to people. And that's something that people don't understand, like, oh, the scalpers, and they rage against him. But there's a piece of that that's social, and you're meeting people, you're making connections, and a lot of times lifelong friends even can be made.
But I will say the best advice I could get for any collector, especially a new collector, is do what you're doing, specialize. In your case, it's the Datsun 510. How many different castings have they made of the Datsun 510? Do you know yet?
I don't know, but I have over 60 of them. So
Okay. There's 97 made. By the way, I don't know. I just made that number up. Okay. But the bottom line is, wouldn't it be kind of cool using Google, Wikipedia, Hot Wheels, Friends, and kind of making a list on your own of every one of those, how many are out there, and then sort of saying how many you have? I just think that makes it's fulfilling. And then you could also, know who the designer was. Do you know who the designer was at Hot Wheels for the 510?
June am I.
Who was it?
Should be June am I.
Okay. Meet them at a convention, write them a letter, reach out to them, learn about the car. I saw you had Brendan Vatuski, one of the greatest guys, here on another podcast. I listened to that podcast. Learn from these guys and be an expert on the 510. And that way you add another element to your collecting, and that's the knowledge. And that's my advice. Whatever you collect, learn as much as you can. Who are the designers? When was the casting first come out? How many of the different models could you possibly get? And have fun.
Yeah, that's honestly great advice. And my collecting went through the stages. I bought everything. Then I was stuck with all these main lines nobody wanted and I didn't want.
Yeah.
And then it just evolved. And then Hot Wheels Wiki, you brought that up. That's a great
Yeah.
resource. That's something that I would, okay, well, this is the next high-end one that I want to check the box on. And I think that's great advice, because these new guys coming in, they do exactly like you said. They just buy all this.
Yeah.
You don't need the 3 color variants of the Gotta Goes unless you really like the toilet car.
Hey, I like the toilet car. Watch it now. Yeah.
So
and also have fun and be creative in how you display. I'm in my office right now, and I built some displays, and then literally you can just open up a drawer and just see the cars, and it's kind of a fun way of just looking at all the different cars. This is the hobby. It's collecting, displaying, knowledge, buying, selling. What else is there? That's it.
the friends you meet along the way. That's about it.
100%.
Well, it's we'll work on wrapping it up there. It's been an absolute pleasure. Bruce, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It meant so much. You replied by far the quickest out of anyone. Literally 30 seconds. That is not an exaggeration. It's awesome to see a name like you so active in the community. You could easily see someone of your status get a chip on their shoulder, not want to mess with the little guy. That is not you at all. Which I think speaks a lot of your character. Thank you so much for being here, guys. If anyone else is going through any tough times, I always try to end the podcast with this. You can reach out to me anytime, reach out to a friend. We're all in this life thing together. Bruce, any parting thoughts?
I'm just a little guy too, having fun and enjoy. Thank you very much. Hello, fellow collectors. I do put out an Instagram at Pink Beach Bomb, where every once in a while I try to show something that's slightly different. I put up about 2,000 videos already. If you don't mind, I have that little shout out, or you can edit it out. Jacob, thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, all of your stuff will be pinned. I'll make sure it's in the description. Your museum website, your Instagram, all of the socials that we can do, your wife's eBay. We're going to make sure we have it all pinned so people can go check it out. Guys, make sure you support Bruce's wife.
Many wives. Okay.
Make sure you support her eBay. She's on an endeavor. It's been an absolute pleasure, Bruce. Thank you so much. And we are going to end it there.
Bye, Jacob. Thank you.